Our next guest was chatting with me about the number of people who listen to the radio station online, and actually, a lot more people are listening online and over the app. But it made me think about his last appearance on the air. Afterward, somebody commented. They said Bill asked him all the wrong questions. Somebody was listening in Pocatello, and I thought, I'm scratching my head because the last time Dar Moon was on the program with us, we spoke during each and every commercial break. I said, what do you want to talk about next? So all the questions were related to that. I guess the person who said that I was asking all the wrong questions didn't realize that there was a confab going on during those breaks. Dar Moon is the man behind a Facebook page called Idaho on Fire, which is really, well, it has caught fire. It has really taken, I think, the state of Idaho by storm. It's a very active and very involved page, and it deals a lot with land use issues. And I think it really does show us that this is of great concern to people who live in the Mountain West. It's 8:34 at 61 on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning. Mr. Moon, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Bill. Pleased to be here.
We were just joking off air because I said it's a small state. We were talking about your wife a few minutes ago, but really the people who are politically active in Idaho, when you really think about it, even in government, there aren't a lot of people who you would say are outspoken, who are willing to say, all right, wait a minute, hold on. And the numbers are few, but those of you who do this definitely are making some waves, and you are planning to make some more next month. There's a big event coming up related to your efforts.
Well, that's right, Bill. And, we're just trying to plant the seeds of liberty in a lot of people's hearts, maybe get them fired up. Idaho on Fire is sponsoring the Idaho Liberty Summit. It will be our 5th summit in Chalice this July 27th, and we're very pleased to bring a lot of great speakers. A lot of people have a lot of knowledge about what's happening in this state on several topics, but certainly we are very worried about a big burning summer. It isn't getting better, and it's not going to get better until people get involved. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking somebody else is going to do it for you, now's the time to jump in.
Yeah, and in the last half hour when I was talking with Steve Millington, we were discussing just how green it is across the region because of all the deep snow and then the heavy rains we had, which were a little unusual. And that means when things dry out that there's a lot of tinder out there that we're going to be dealing with this summer.
Well, there is. It's unprecedented, and it's not uncommon anywhere in the Mountain West. We will burn down Idaho, we'll burn down California and Montana and Oregon and Washington unless we change our management team. And the management team who's running the show here doesn't seem to get it. Their nose is in the clouds here, thinking about locking up more wilderness areas, designating more wild and scenic rivers, and all of this is on behest of the environmentalists who really own this forest fire season coming up. And I don't know if you've seen some of our signs, but we've got a sign campaign out there.
I was going to just ask you about that.
Yeah, we have 50 signs throughout Idaho. Some actually went to California in the Paradise area. People are fed up. And the people that have really caused this forest to become so unnaturally built up with tinder and deadfall are the environmentalists. They've locked us out of logging and access to a lot of these areas. And, it's what nature does. It's going to burn it down. So we need to light people up, get them on fire, and get people to realize what has happened and what we need to do to turn this around. And that's what Idaho on Fire is about. We have an activism section where we want to engage people to get involved. We have a number of state legislators on the site, so it's a good opportunity to let people know what you're thinking about that can make a difference at the legislature. And then we have a team of very intelligent constitutional researchers who are looking at the law and where we stand as a state, and what federal lands really mean. So all three of these components come together on our Facebook site. But what we are going to do with the Liberty Summit is bring people to Chalice. It's a ways out, so we've got a big week schedule of events, so you can make it kind of your vacation plan. But Chalice is kind of the epicenter for the start of the Liberty Summits. We had Liberty Summit number 1 back in the day. Our speaker was Andrew Breitbart. It was a great opportunity to meet him, and we've just been on that roll since. This will be number 5, and we're going to have Representative Russ Fulcher speaking, and it's a great opportunity for folks to meet him. He sits on the Resource Committee, very powerful and very important seat right now.
Hold on to that thought. We'll take a short break. We've got more coming up with Dar Moon, representing Idaho on Fire. And we'll talk a little bit more about this gathering in Chalice and how you might get involved and be able to attend in just a few minutes. It's 8:40. We're at 61. Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Magic Valley This Morning. Joining us is Dar Moon, and as I pointed out, he is the creator of Idaho on Fire, its Facebook presence, and they have a big event coming up in just a few weeks that's going to be taking place in Chalice. It's 62. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, and 8:41 on Magic Valley This Morning. Dar, a couple of things right off the top. Maybe we'll break things up in this segment this way. We'll talk a little bit about how people can actually reserve a spot at the event. And number 2, something caught my attention on Idaho on Fire. It might have been last night or this morning. And number 3, maybe we can take some telephone calls as well. But for those people who would like to attend the event, what do they need to know, and what do they need to start doing now?
Well, I'll tell you, we have a web page called idahoonfire.org. And you can go there and read about the summit and some of the speakers, and you can register right there, too. It has all of the registration information and where you can stay at Living Waters Ranch in Chalice or some of the other local hotels and RV parks and such. We have a lot planned for the event. We will be doing a mining tour on the Friday before of the old ghost town of Custer and the General Custer Mine. And then on Saturday, we'll do the summit, a long list of things there I'll go through. And then on Sunday, Mark Herr with Center for Self-Governance is teaching a class about building habits and practice for people to learn to become involved and learn to become effective in redressing government. So we've got a lot on the plate. Maybe I can just go through and give you a rundown of who will be there.
Sure.
Mark Herr, of course, will be speaking. You should look him up, Center for Self-Governance. Very entertaining. He's been all across America. He's kind of the Johnny Appleseed of Liberty. He is the fellow that has produced 4 films on the murder of Lavoy Finicum. He will also be bringing Jeanette Finicum with him, and we will show 2 of the films after the summit. It's very important to understand what really happened behind the Finicum issue. So there's a great opportunity. We will have Dr. Duke Pesta with Freedom Project Academy, and he is just a wonderful educator. He has an online school. He will be talking about the corruption of our colleges and how they're undermining our republic. Dr. Duke is a brilliant man and a very entertaining speaker. We then will have a fellow with the American Mining Rights Association speak, Shannon Poe. He's been fighting back against over-regulation in the mining industry for a very long time. Of course, here in central Idaho, we have several very important mines that need to get started. We have one of 2 of the only sources of mineable cobalt in the world, and we're trying to get those going, bring some jobs and opportunity back. And Idaho is one of the largest reserves of rare earth metals in the world. And they're all locked up here in wilderness and next to wilderness and wilderness areas that are going to be, tagged. So
we may need them soon too, because the Chinese are saying they may put the brakes on shipping them to the U.S.
Well, we are strategically over a barrel worse than we have ever been in the oil embargoes of the 70s or that. We import 100% of our needs for most strategic metals, cobalt being one of them, but the rare earths also. And we have rare earths. We have all of these metals in America, and most of them are right here in Idaho. So this is a very, very important topic, and we're pleased to bring in Mr. Poe. We also have Alex Newman. Those folks that might know Alex, he writes for the New American Magazine. He is traveling all over America right now, giving talks. And this guy, he's an international journalist and a real journalist. He is very brilliant, a wonderful man to meet. I'm sure everyone will enjoy his commentary. And then more on land rights and jurisdiction, we will have Ammon Bundy speak. And Ammon does a wonderful job of talking about jurisdiction, from your personal jurisdiction, to your family, what those rights are, what the county should be doing for you, and the state. And, of course, Ammon's no stranger to controversy. We'll have a very entertaining time with him. We heard him speak, and of course we know Ammon from the days of trying to get him out of prison on his false accusation. Being a free man and locked up is a horrible story in itself, but he does a wonderful presentation, and we're very pleased to have him.
We've got a couple of callers, that would like to reach you this morning, and
sure.
We'll get to the telephones. It's coming up at 8:47. And caller, you're on the air on KLIX with Darmoon. Go ahead.
When it comes to this type of thing, managing our forests, the environmentalist groups, they have they tap into the Equal Access to Justice Act. And since between 2011 and 2018, it's sue and settle. They sue and the government pays them. And Obama administration promoted this to keep these groups alive. And they will sue, and then between 2011 and 2018, they received $9 million of taxpayer money to continue to disrupt the Forest Service. There's 80 million acres of Forest Service land, and they spend so much of their budget just settling litigation. And then when the forests are overgrown, they have to do, it's always just react. We never plan. And once they're burnt, they're burnt. So the Forest Service, in some respects, is trying to do the right thing, but there's no getting anything done with these people because these litigants, the environmentalists, they're experts at this, and they're rich.
Yeah, the rich part of it gives them a lot of money to have some influence. He's spot on, though, that we're up against a very organized opposition.
Well, they've been organized for a very long time, and they know how to play the system. They've been smarter at this game than we have, and we've been asleep at the wheel for a long time. Even the suing and settling issue is part of it, but they have now integrated themselves into government through these non-government organizations. And they have become partners. You're going to hear that. We are partners with this and that other organization, and they're funded by us taxpayers. So Trout Unlimited, Idaho Conservation League, Western Watersheds, they all have a little piece of this huge pie that's worth billions of dollars, and they use it to do projects that all sound nice and wonderful, but just spend our money accomplishing nothing but locking away Idahoans' opportunity and economic opportunity to have benefit in the forest. And if we don't do something, it will be all locked away, and you won't you won't have any chance to do much about that. So now is the time.
Got about 10 minutes from 9 o'clock, and we're joined by Dar Moon on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And speaking about the conference, Idaho on Fire has a scheduled next month at Chalice. And we do want to point out, Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning as well. Telephone number 208-736-0300. And I believe we have another caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning. Well, there's several things that all fit together, and they've talked about those. Number one, the Clinton Roadless Initiative, what came about in the 90s, and it was an executive order. And so you can't get in and fight these fires on federal land. Number one, they banned DDT back in the early 70s. The reason I'm in Idaho is because I work for a company that had a chlorinated hydrocarbon product like DDT. It controlled the pine beetle very effectively and very safely, but the environmental groups, when the EPA came online, they had an agenda. William Ruckelshaus came from the World Wildlife Fund, and so forth. But then the other thing was the introduction of the wolves. Okay, so before the game you'd get a fire break out there because in the meadows they would graze that down. When the wolves came online, then they're not out there grazing because they're going to be killed by the wolves. So there's all these factors, but if we could bring back DDT to control the pine beetle would be a big factor, and I'd like to comment about that a little bit, because it not only would be fighting West Nile virus and other things and malaria worldwide. So
your comments.
Well, we have lived under this fear that's been generated by all kinds of activist groups. And we've come to believe that there's such a thing as environmental science, and there is no science to it. We have been one giant guinea pig here, and they're experimenting on our forest, and it's obviously failed, and it's failed horribly. So all of this environmentalism has turned us into ash, and it's continuing to build upon itself. The wolf introduction, now grizzly bears. When does the insanity stop? People have to look out their window and see what's going on. Come up here to the Salmon Chalice Forest and look at the forest. It's dead and dying. And the beetle thing could have been stopped. I watched an infestation along the Salmon River in probably about 1987. Some of the first trees were spotted. And I wrote a letter to the forest ranger. You guys better get those knocked down and get them out and burn them. Well, they were next to the river. Well, you can't cut a tree within 300 feet of the river, so they didn't. And so the beetle spread, and now Stanley, used to be pristine, beautiful place. It's full of a dead forest, and you've got environmentalists to thank for that.
There's a comment that someone made on Idaho on Fire Facebook page last night, discussing how he was writing a story about wildfire from last year, and it says he went to the area, and then a couple of thunder boomers came through, and suddenly all you had were washouts. So all of a sudden, all that topsoil and nutrients and everything gets washed away, and here you go again. There's no recovery from these things in many cases any longer. Some of these fires, which would have been naturally occurring at some point in the past, and things would have gotten healthy afterwards, it's not happening now because of the way we're managing it.
And it won't happen. I mean, these problems are going to affect generations to come. It isn't a simple solution now. Most of the forest is dead and dying, and with that comes the destruction of the watersheds. There's a lake I used to go to when I was a kid that no longer exists because the watershed has been destroyed by forest fire that consumed all of the great timber. And I listened to your program earlier about all of these school bonds that failed. Well, here we're burning down, the crop. We're burning down the opportunity to pay for our schools and pay for all of these infrastructures that we need. But we're not going to do it The state of Idaho's forest brings about $40 million a year to the school. And the federal forest, which is 96% of the forest, costs us hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Now, that's foolishness on steroids, and we have to turn that around, and we can. I got to believe we can before it's too late.
I for people who have not yet seen the signs, and as you mentioned, they're as far west as California now, but these are the log it, graze it, or burn it signs, and they've been popping up in a lot of places. Just alone, I think that they can help spur a little bit of public awareness.
Well, that's the idea. It's sort of twofold in that regard. We want to spur people's awareness and get them to thinking about that, but we also want to put a little hitch in the giddy up there on these environmental groups, and we want people to stop and think about when they send their check off to these organizations, what are they really supporting? And, until we come to that point of realization, we're going to be left with the scars upon the land that John Denver used to sing about that are all by the hand of the environmentalist.
I was going to say, the environmental movement, I assume when it got started, I was a wee lad at the time, so I wasn't at any of the meetings or anything like that. But a lot of the people probably had good intentions in the beginning. It has become, though, to some degree, I hate to say this, corporatized. One of our callers referenced these people who come in and they're professionals at what they do. This is how they make their money.
Well, the public has been duped on this issue, and it's seriously sad. I think the ranchers and the loggers and the miners really are environmentalists. We care more about our lands than anybody in Washington, D.C. can, and that's part of the problem. It's federal. We don't. It's not Idaho. 2/3 of Idaho has nothing to do with Idaho. If you're cutting some wood on the federal lands, why, you're in deep trouble. And just about anything you do, even picking a mushroom on federal lands, you can be cited for. So, it's our lands just like it is in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. You can have these big dreams about what that land is and what it means to you, but you can't do anything with it. You can't do anything that will benefit you or mankind. And it's terribly sad. It's terribly sad to see our ranchers. They're kind of the last holdouts up here in the Chalice area. They run the loggers off, and the miners they're trying to stomp out, even though we're blessed with some of the richest mineral deposits and strategic mineral deposits in the world. And the ranchers are the next ones to go, and they all know it. And they're starving people in Custer County and Lemhi County and all these little counties, Boise and Valley, out. And there will be no retrieving. When kids can't come home to take over the ranch or have any opportunity to make a living out here, they're winning by attrition. And that's a very sad thing.
We've got to take a break for news. I've got about a 5-minute break. If you can stick around, grab yourself another cup of coffee.
Sure enough.
We can talk in the next segment. Dar Moon is joining us on News Radio 1310. He is with Idaho on Fire, and we're going to be talking a bit more about the program they have coming up in Chalice next month, too. It's 8:59. The news is next. Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning. And just a couple of quick news headlines, just to mention tomorrow. Benito Baeza will rejoin us. He'll be returning from a trip out of state that he's been away on for a couple of weeks, but we welcome him back. In the meantime, just a couple of quick headlines. 2 grizzly bears have been euthanized. That's the word government likes to use for killed. It's a euphemism. They have been euthanized, one in North Idaho and one not far away near Kalispell in Montana. The one in Montana had been breaking into chicken coops. The one near Copeland in Boundary County here in Idaho had actually killed 7 sheep. Also, do want to mention a sad story out of Logan, Utah. The 5-year-old girl who police believe was killed by an uncle. She was buried yesterday, Elizabeth Lizzie Shelley. Her funeral took place. She was buried at a local cemetery in Logan after a funeral service at Nyman Funeral Home. Her uncle, who could have faced the death penalty, we are being told, will not face the death penalty because he cut a deal when he told police where her remains could be found, and they were half a block away from the family's home. Also, Idaho officials have sold 7 commercial building lots owned by the state in the southwestern city of Meridian. The Idaho Department of Land says the auction on Friday brought in $1.5 million, nearly $100,000 more than the appraised values of the properties. We're speaking this morning with Dar Moon. He is the man behind Idaho on Fire, and of course he was telling us they have the web presence as well as the Facebook page. A lot of people comment, of course, on the Facebook page. It's a very active Facebook group. He is joining us this morning. We're talking a little bit about an upcoming event they have in Chalice in July. As he pointed out, it'd be a great way to spend a week. You could vacation. You could see some wonderful, wonderful country, what remains of it. You can hear some wonderful speakers who will talk about just essentially how we can perhaps eventually reassert what you might call rights to the land here in this part of the country. Bill Cowley with you on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com at 63. Dar, a couple of questions. We talked a little bit earlier, just briefly. We touched on the rare earth minerals. And the last time you were on the air with us, this subject came up. I got to believe that what's underground here in Idaho, that what is available, would total in the billions. And it could go into the tens to hundreds of billions of dollars in value with these minerals. And you referenced the fact that some of these school bonds and other things have failed. If we were able to extract these minerals, my guess is just the economic activity that would generate would more than pay for a lot of these expansion projects that we have.
Well, it's true, Bill. My background is I'm a geological engineer, so I can speak with some authority as to the vast mineral wealth of Idaho, and it's locked away, and it's locked away for us and future generations, and it's a shame. That wealth, too, is strategic for the new technologies that are coming. We cannot do what we need to do and compete in the high-tech world without cobalt. We cannot do it without rare earth minerals. And we have it all right here in Idaho. So we've got to turn that around. Now, mining's been given such a bad name. And I had a fellow here the other day. He was complaining about how mining is such a scar upon the land, and everybody kind of looks at it that way. But they don't look at their home in Boise or in Meridian and all these areas that used to be orchards and trees and crop fields that are now plowed under to build homes on, and their home is one of them. And their home and their car and all their fancy gadgetry is built on the mining industry, and it's built on an industry that now China controls. And it's a fool's game. So we need to invest in mining. We do it better than anybody in the world as far as environmentally, and we need to, or we will become a third world country.
We're already, you talk about third world comparisons. And I have driven enough of Idaho through small towns and back roads over the last 5 years to see where places you could tell that at one time they were very vibrant, and now you drive through them and you realize if they're not totally abandoned, the people who are living in these areas, they're really struggling to get by. And you don't want them to become wards of the state. I don't think they want to become wards of the state, which essentially is what has happened in a lot of these smaller communities. If nothing else, they would have work. They would have work that paid well. They could then themselves have some nice homes again. And these are things they're being denied. The environmentalists who claim they care so much about them really don't care how these people live.
Well, they don't. And that is the big fear here in these small rural communities. Dorothy's district, District 8, is the largest in the state because it's the most rural. There's 16,000 square miles in this district, where some districts in Ada County, Boise, are 10 square miles. Well, in this 16,000 square miles, we have an opportunity to empower not only Idahoans, but help empower the entire state and the nation. The wealth of the nation lies here. When I was a younger fellow, up here, they had a bumper sticker that said, "Mine the mountains, prosperity's fountains." And it's so true. We forget about it now. Today, the bumper stickers are. I've got one that says, "I'm an angry villager," and people are angry about this. We don't know what happened. We reached out and shook the hands of these folks and agreed to be a partner in this game, and they've collaborated against us now to where we have no say, and it is destroying rural America. And when you look at politically the United States, look at those counties that voted for President Trump, and look at those counties that voted for Hillary Clinton. And it's pretty obvious that the vast majority of the landscape was on the Trump train. And it's because we're reaching out. We need some hope. And there is some hope, I believe. We have to believe that. My bumper sticker says I'm an angry villager, but I'm not really angry at people. I'm angry at the policies and the direction. And we have to unite together to change that. That's the big impetus for Idaho on Fire, and that is the impetus here for the summit that we're holding. I may have mentioned that Congressman Fulcher will speak. He is a very powerful voice for Idaho. I think he's kind of the only Idaho congressman at this point. He sits on the Resource Committee, and he's been fighting back, and I'm very, very pleased with his performance. And so he will be there. Great opportunity to shake his hand. He's been a great friend, and this is how we piece it back together. We have to win this argument. If we don't, we're going to lose our rural communities, and with it, we're losing our history.
Well, you reference Mr. Fulcher may be the only representative Idaho has. The criticisms of the alternative in the other district are, well, we get back to Boulder, what was it, Boulder White Clouds,
Yes.
and some of these other aspects of the legacy there. And it raises the questions I think a lot of people might have. Whose side are these people on?
Well, it does beg that question. The Boulder White Clouds is a prime example. This all got started over a mining issue. Sarco had a large high-grade molybdenum deposit outlined in the White Clouds. And this was in the 70s, and at that time it was a $2 billion reserve. Now, the Thompson Creek molybdenum mine, which is just downriver here, it had been producing for many, many years. It's kind of on operational shutdown right now, but the grade of the moly there is 0.1% to 0.2%. The Asarco find in the White Clouds was 10 times that. So it was very high grade, very valuable. Well, that began the lockup of the Boulder White Clouds. One of my college mates went to work for the Forest Service in the mineral evaluation of that area for this wilderness study, which it now has become. There were 3,000 mining claims, and they needed to evaluate the mineral potential, and they were just going to deny these claims of validity. Well, out of the 3,000 claims, 2,000 of them were identified as being mineable and a true mineral reserve. The White Clouds locked up for this nation in our communities just about every metal and mineral that we need, from antimony to zinc. So it was a big shot. And we just, once it's locked up, nobody knows. Nobody knows that history. It's going away. And when they've succeeded in finally locking it all up in wilderness, all the great stories of all the great men that came before us are gone with it.
I've got to think that one thing I can say about President Trump, he seems attuned to those people in what we call flyover countries, to what their complaints are. On the other hand, I don't know that 4 or 8 years is enough to turn this around, because the momentum, at least among the regulatory agencies and what we're up against, it's a long-term project. It's going to take 25, 30 years before we could finally turn this around. I don't see any quick victories, I guess, ahead.
I don't either. We've been 50 years in the making of this disaster, and it's going to take some time to ride it. It's going to take 100 years for the forest to recover. Um, that is just the fact. And so, the first step in a 1,000-mile journey is just that, the first step. We've got a long way to go, but if we don't, the great opportunities and the things that built America will be lost. And it's visible, it's on display. That's why you need to come to the summit. You need to meet people that are going to be there. Not only are our speakers great, but we have many state representatives that are going to be there. A lot of people in the resource industry are going to be there. We need to find a way out of this problem. And I believe we can. I believe we have to start. I believe that we can make this happen. I just can't see us continuing to burn down the state. And I think most Idahoans agree with me.
I wanted to point out to people who are just joining us, Darmoon is behind Idaho on Fire, and there's a website and there's a Facebook page as well. And if you have not joined the group on the Facebook page, I'd highly recommend it because the detailed information that is coming in from various people on the subject is amazing to read, and it's a real education if you can sit down and even take 10, 15 minutes a day to look through the posts, and people post there frequently, I should point out. To recap, we've got a couple of minutes to go to recap for people who would like to attend the event next month in Chalice. How do they go about making reservations? And it's a week-long event. What are the dates again?
Well, the summit is on the 27th of July. You can go to idahoonfire.org to read more about the events of the day and of that week. You can sign up right there to join Idaho on Fire, the Facebook site, and you can sign up and reserve your place for the Liberty Summit. Like I say, we'll have the Gold Mine Tour on Friday, the day before, and on Sunday there is going to be a class from Mark Herr about activism and how you can play your civic role. So there's much to be done and seen. It's a wonderful place to visit. We're having the summit at Living Waters Ranch. It's a beautiful place there, and great opportunity for you to meet a lot of very charming people that run that place.
I was going to say, it will be the type of event, we realize how this is going to work. You'll have a lot of well-meaning people who are there in attendance and looking for solutions, and then you'll have mainstream media trying to hover around to tell everybody how awful you all are.
Well, we're not really angry villagers. We are keeping a positive attitude to make a difference, and I think that's how we win the day. It doesn't take an environmental scientist to see that this is a grand failure, and just open your eyes. Come out here and visit us. Come see the forest for yourself. You be the judge. And I think you're going to agree that we would be a lot better off taking care of our forest by logging it, by doing what, our forefathers did. I think we need to look in the rear-view mirror a little bit to find our way forward. And I think we are losing the wisdom that, our forefathers paid a heavy price to learn. And I think we need to sit back and honor that, think about it, make a family vacation, come see us in Custer County. It's a wonderful place.
Well, I want to thank you, Darmoon, and we'll talk again, I'm sure sometime soon. This is an issue not going to go away, but always a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate all of your help in exposing these issues and helping us with this summit, and hope you can make it too.
Going to try.
Very good.
I've actually been looking at some of the accommodations while we're speaking.
Excellent. We'd love to have you up there.
All right. Hey, thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you, Bill.
Darmoon joining us this morning from Idaho on Fire. Coming up on 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we've got 40 minutes left of Magic Valley this morning. It's 64. Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX, the newsradio1310.com. Going to talk before the program ends today, some bad news out of that stretch of land called the southern U.S. border. Details on the way.